So this is going to be my Goodreads Wrapped of 2022. This video is going up a bit late. I'm filming this on January 18th. I meant to do this weeks ago, but I haven't been able to do anything YouTube related in a while. I've just been dealing with some life stuff, so but I still wanted to do the Goodreads Wrapped Up video at least. So let's just go ahead and go through it, see what I read this year. And I've already uploaded kind of my favorite books of the year. I'm not going to do least favorite or anything else. I didn't really have time for the other wrapped videos that I had in my head, but that is totally fine. Let's just go ahead and go into the Goodreads Wrapped. I have my laptop here, and let's see what I did this year. So 2022, my year in books, I read a total of 26,155 pages, over 104 books, which is just insane. That's a lot of pages. How many pages was last year? Let's see if I went up or down. I averaged about the same, 26,000. That's so funny that I read about the same amount of pages. Anyway, so the shortest book was Werewolf by Night, which was 20 pages. This is a comic from the 70s-ish, and it was Moon Knight's first appearance in a comic book. That's why I read it. I just wanted to see what he was when he first was introduced into the Marvel comics. He is very different than what we later see in the actual like Moon Knight series and like all his other comics. So it was a weird comic. I wouldn't say I liked it, but I just wanted to see what he was like in the beginning. And then the longest book I read this year is The Illuminae Files by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, which is 608 pages. Yeah, that clocks. Thinking about it, that is easily the longest book I've read this year. I'm not sure I even read any that were 500 pages. Everything else was probably 300 or 400 pages. But the thing with The Illuminae Files, which makes it like really interesting to read, is it's a mixed media book. So even though it's 600 pages, it still goes pretty fast. Because for the longest time I didn't pick it up because I found that so intimidating. But I really enjoyed this book, and I for sure plan on finishing this series this year. So I'm really excited about that. The average book length in 2022 for me was 251 pages, which that sounds about right. I read a lot of like rom-com type romance books this year, and those tend to be between like 200 350-ish pages, so that sounds about right. My most shelved book that I read this year is I reread Twilight. I don't remember. Oh, I listened to the audiobook of Twilight, that's what it was. And that book has been shelved 7 million times, if I'm reading that number right. Yeah, 7,697,610 people have shelved that book. So that sounds about right. And then this is kind of hilarious. My least shelved book is a Eternals comic that was an exclusive to the Marvel Unlimited app. 0 people have shelved that book on Goodreads. I am the only one, apparently. So I enjoyed that. I think there were 7 of them. And number 5 apparently has not been shelved by anyone other than me. So you're welcome, whoever wrote that Eternals comic. So my average rating for 2022 is 4.4 stars. Once again, that does not surprise me. I give most books a 5 stars. The only time, like, if I liked it but didn't absolutely love it, I'll give it a 4 stars. Anytime I'm rating anytime I'm rating lower than that, that probably means I had a problem with the book. Either it was really boring, I had a problem with the characters, I thought it was like unrealistic characterization, something like that, or it just did something to really annoy me. So I don't think there were many books that I rated that low, but I think it goes over that, so we'll see. My highest rated book on Goodreads that I also rated high was Volume 4 of Heartstopper by Alice Osman. That does not surprise me. The average rating is 4.64. I gave it a 5 stars, I believe. It doesn't surprise me that Heartstopper has such a high average rating. I've yet to meet anyone who didn't like those books. Like, everyone I know loved them, so that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. My first and probably one of my only reviews that I wrote this year is the Werewolf by Night comic. I gave it a 3 stars, And I read this to see Moon Knight's first appearance. Really the only part of this story I understood. Yeah, I didn't understand any of the Werewolf by Night stuff. I still haven't watched that special on Disney Plus. I don't really know a lot about Werewolf by Night's story. But yeah, there's that. And then, yeah, let me just, I say quickly, but let me just read through all of the books I read this year. I'm just gonna kind of quickly list everything off. Quickly, give me a break, it is 104 books. But by Harper Lynn, I read Cremas, Christmas Cookies and Crooks, Espressos and Eggnogs and Evil X's, Double Shots, Donuts and Dead Dudes, Macchiatos, Macaroons, and Malice. All of that series, the rest of that. Then I read Kingdom Keepers, the 5th book, Shell Game by Ridley Pearson. I read Blindsided by Amy Dawes. I read also Punch, Pastries, and Poison by Harper Lynn. And then I read those 7 of them, Eternal comics. The 500-Year War is the series. I read The Off Limits Rule by Sarah Adams, The Matzo Ball by Jean Meltzer. I thought I read that last year. I read The Temporary Roomie by Sarah Adams. I love Sarah Adams so much. I read The Love Hypothesis by Allie Hazelwood, one of my favorite books of the year. Although, looking back, that feels like so much longer than a year ago. But, okay. I read Always Only You by Chloe Leese, Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon, Twilight by Stephanie Meyer, Desperate Measures by Katie Robert, Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider by, who wrote that? It's whoever wrote, what's her name? Shauna McGuire. That's who wrote that one. Would I Lie to the Duke by Eva Lee, 1 Week to Claim It All by Adriana Herrera, The Cheat Sheet also by Sarah Adams, The Donut Trap by Julie Tu, My Darling Duke by Stacey Reed. I read the other book in the Ghost Spider series, the other 2. I read a comic, Spider-Man Spider-Verse. I read Ghost Spider, which is a different series about Spider-Gwen. I read The Singles Table by Sarah Desai. I read Radioactive Spider-Gwen, Werewolf by Night. I read 4 different volumes of a Moon Knight comic by, can't remember the name, it's not important. I read Teach Me by Olivia Dade, more Heartstopper, Volume 2. Stuck With You by Allie Hazelwood, one of her novellas, which was okay. More Moon Knight comics. House of M, which is an X-Men Wanda comic. The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, Heartstopper Volume 3. My Life with the Walter Boys by Ali Novak. Keep an eye out for that coming on Netflix sometime this year, I believe. Heartstopper by Alice Osman Volume 4. Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welch. Really loved that one. Under One Roof by Allie Hazelwood. Her novellas are okay. Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I read The Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy, which I don't have words about that one. It was, if I was making a worst books list, those would go on it. I liked the first one, the second and the third. I'm sorry, Jenny Han, those are terrible. The One by John Mars, which is my other worst book of the year. I'm not reading any more thrillers. I can't do it. They're not for me. Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welch. The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Abertali. Loved that book. Runaway Max by Brianna Jovanoff, if that's how you say her last name. I read a Stranger Things comic about Will. I can't see the author's name. Daughter of the Deep by Rick Riordan. I read a Miss Marvel comic, which was okay. I liked Miss Marvel as a character, but her comic was very, like, juvenile, but I realized that she is a young character, so I feel like her comics are written towards a younger audience. The The Strangers by Margaret Peter Haddix. That was a really fun audiobook. The 1000th Floor by Catherine McGee. Easily one of the worst books I read this year. Falling for Your Best Friend by Emma St. Clair. Loved that one. Ace of Spades by, I don't want to mess up her name, so I'm not even going to do it. But I loved that book. Spoiler alert by Olivia Dade. Also loved it. When She Was Naughty by Tessa Dare. Thought that was a lot of fun. Murder on Astor Place by Victoria Thompson. A really fun cozy mystery, but historical. Knocked Up Cinderella by Julie Hammerly. Really enjoyed that one as well. I read volumes 1 and 2 of the Twilight graphic novels, which I found at Half Price Books, which I was so freaking excited about because they don't print those anymore. I read Death by Coffee by Alex Erickson, another cozy mystery. Lots of fun with that one. I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. One of, I think, the only nonfiction I read this year, but one of the best like memoirs I've ever read. Well Suited by Stacey Hart, which was okay. Can't Escape Love by Alyssa Cole. Alyssa Cole's another author that like I know a lot of people really love her, but every time I've read one of her books, like, it's okay. I don't love it. So, Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco, followed by Kingdom of the Cursed by Carrie Maniscalco. I don't love them as much as Stalking Jack the Ripper, but I do still love them, and I'm very interested. She's now transitioning into adult fantasy, or into at least adult books, and I am so excited to see that from her. I read Happily This Christmas by Susan Mallory, another one of the worst books I read this year. I hated the characters. I read Temptation by Ivy Smoke, which was ridiculous, but I loved the drama. The Vampire Knitting Club, and the sequels Stitches and Witches, and Crochet and Cauldrons by Nancy Warren, a cozy mystery series with a paranormal element, and absolutely adored it. I read A Merry Little Christmas, Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sarah Simone. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite book of all time, but I liked the characters. By the Book by Jasmine Guillory, loved this one. It was so much fun. She just has never disappointed me. The Forever Trap, which was a Doctor Who audiobook, really enjoyed that one. A Nun for the Viking Warrior by Lucy Morris, one of my favorite books of the year. I really loved it. I read some Hulkling and Wiccan comics. This is volumes 1 through 4, and volume 5 is not out yet, which is deeply upsetting. And then I read All Is Merry and Bright by Casey Stockton. This was a Christmas historical romance. It was good. It wasn't great, but I did like it. I read Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood, which is also one of the worst books I read this year. I'm really sorry, Ali Hazelwood. I usually adore you, but this book, I hated it. I loved the main hero, the character. The heroine, she irked me, and then the ending was so dumb. I read Darkhold, which is a Scarlet Witch comic collection, and it's just so upsetting to me that like they had this sitting right here and they still chose to make the Multiverse of Madness movie, but whatever. I read The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jin Wong. Really loved that one. I wish that she would like make sequels to it. I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, which is now one of my all-time favorite like YA contemporaries. It was so freaking good. I loved it. I read A Cat Cafe Christmas by Cody Gary, which was an impulse buy from Barnes & Noble, but I really enjoyed it, and it was very like Christmassy and just lots of fun. I read Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter, and I really enjoyed that one as well. I thought it was a fun read. I read Renegades by Marissa Meyer, which was also really good, and I do plan on finishing that series this year as well. I read Recommended for You by Laura Silverman, which was another really cute YA contemporary. I read Right Before Christmas by Julie Hammerly, which was a cute romance. I read The Fate of Stars by S.D. Semper, which was a really fun fantasy, sapphic romance, and I will probably continue that series at some point. I just don't know when. And then I read Kiss Her Once for Me by Allison Coacham, or however you say, and that was quite literally one of the worst books I've ever read. I skimmed the last like 100 pages. It was so bad. So that's all the books I read this year. That's 104 books. I've been talking really fast and for so long, but there was a lot of books I loved this year, but there was also a lot of books I didn't love, and I wish that I had more books that I loved, but I'm already starting this year off to a good year, so we'll see. My last review of the year was one for Jeanette McCurdy's memoir. I don't write reviews very often, but I'll read this review because I like actually wrote a whole paragraph. I said, I don't take the time to write reviews often. Clearly, I read this book in what, like September, and that was the last review I wrote. But this book has truly blown me away so much, I believe it warranted one. First off, I want to list all the trigger warnings so you can decide if this book is right for you. All of these topics are discussed in detail: sexual assault, parental abuse, verbal abuse, childhood sexualization, anorexia, bulimia, disordered eating, weight with specific numbers mentioned, religious trauma, mental health, panic attacks, OCD, schizophrenia, cancer, death of a parent. And then my actual review. I don't read nonfiction often, but as a fan of Jeanette for years, I wanted to pick this up and hear her story. While in many parts it is incredibly difficult to read these terrible experiences she had, she writes with some candor Such candor and sincerity. I found myself unable to set the book down over the last few days. It was very enlightening to see into the life of a childhood star, even if this isn't all child actors' experience. I shudder to think how many have stories just like her. I've always admired Jeanette for her talent in comedy. iCarly was such a huge part of my childhood, and I'm loving the reboot in my adulthood. But it's definitely scary to see her behind-the-scenes experiences, not only with the creator, but with her own mother. Mothers can be complicated, and her book describes the duality of the relationship so well, the highs and the lows between wanting to please her mother while constantly worrying about the backlash she could face if she did something wrong. I think the part I really connected with the most was Jeanette's reflections on mental health, specifically OCD, anxiety, and EDs. She didn't sugarcoat her experiences and told her whole truth. I've read a lot of celebrity memoirs and I've enjoyed all of them, but this book was truly astounding. Her approach to telling the whole messy truth was very graceful, and I stand by that. So, yeah, that is the end of my 2022 reading challenge and like kind of the look back on it with Goodreads. 104 books. My goal had been 100, so I did meet my goal. My goal is 100 again this year, so I am pretty proud of all the books I read this year, even if there were quite a few that I didn't like, I didn't love. That is okay. I still was able to discover some new authors that I did really like and start a few series that I am really looking forward to continuing this year. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I upload booktube content. I try to upload every Sunday. For the next little while, that might be a little sporadic. There's just like when something has to give, usually it's my booktube channel, just because I'm really busy with some important life stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this video regardless. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!